Hey, it's George Fourie. Welcome to the Martial Arts Media Business Podcast. In this episode, I'm chatting to repeat guest Kevin Blundell from Kumaru Martial Arts System. Now, if you've listened to the podcast over the years, we originally spoke on episode 20, talking about signing up 100 new students within 5 weeks. Then we got together on episode 115, talking about the strategic mindset behind 23 locations. And this episode is really special to me because you listen to episode 115, that is where this whole new journey begun. Let me give you a few insights. So episode 115 was actually a recording from our internal private partners event that we hosted for our partner members. So 3 times a year, we get our partner members together, and it's a combination of masterminding, networking, and bringing speakers together and just learning and growing and sharing information and networking together. And after the event, Kevin spoke at the event, which was the recording of episode 115. And after that, we started talking about this process of opening another location. Now, Kevin is one of the most humble and sincerest guys that you'll meet, and won't always reveal the depth of knowledge that he has within the industry. But when you speak to him, you'll know that he's very methodical and everything is systemized and designed for success, step by step, with absolute certainty and clarity. And we started talking about the process of how they go about opening successful location after location. And they've rinsed and repeated this process 20 plus times very, very successfully. And so I spoke to Kevin about, number one, speaking again at one of our events, but how about we actually just look at the whole process and the blueprint and map it out and see if it's something that we can share with other school owners. And that's why I'm really excited about this podcast, because we're just in the process of putting together the next profitable location blueprint. So depending on when you're listening to this, we are hosting a partners intensive event that for the first time we're opening up to the public. And if you're listening to this a bit later, there'll actually be, the program will be ready to go and available, which is the full course, the next profitable location blueprint. So we chat a bit about the first steps. If you're looking at opening a next location, what are the things that you got to look for in, firstly, why do you need to do it in the first place? How do you go about probing the population? What have you got to look for? What is the minimum number of people that you should have in a town if it's a rural town? What is the best structure to set up your location, and all the rest? So we're going to jump right in. Now, wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If it's on YouTube, hit subscribe. If it's on your favorite audio channel, make sure you subscribe that you get notified when our next episodes come out. And look for the notes and the links, the show notes. Episode 129. So we're at martialartsmedia.com/129. Check in the show notes. There are links available to the event depending on when you are watching or listening to this. There'll still be time to jump on. Otherwise, the program should be available. Have a look. And if you are seriously considering opening up a next location, it might be worth checking out. All right, but let's get into the magic. Let's jump into the show. Let's do it. Kevin, so in the context of opening a new location, we always ask the marketing question first. But in reference to opening a new location, what has been the best marketing campaign or promotion that you've done that's been most successful for you?
We've had a number of successes, but one that comes to mind is when we opened one location, we systematically went around creating rumours and whispers. So we joined some local Facebook groups. We spoke to local sporting groups, and we just said, hey, there's a new martial arts school coming to town. We had a few people in the geographical area, and we asked them just to, in their day-to-day activities, just say, oh, by the way, there's a new martial arts school coming to town. And it piqued a lot of people's interest. So it was really good how it unfolded for us.
What was the result of doing that strategy?
Well, it was really good. On our opening week, we got 50 paid trials for the first week before we even commenced. And during the construction phase, I was present a fair bit and going to the hardware store, service station, just interacting with local community. And I always told them what was going on. And funny enough, a lot of those guys booked in, paid for their trial, and were there that first week. Some are still with us in that area. So it was really good. It's just really successful.
Fantastic. So, Kevin, I wanted to bring you on. We've got, and depending on when you're listening to this, but we've got an event coming up, and we've put this program together called the Next Profitable Location Blueprint. If I think of any martial arts business owner in the world, and I think who would be the renowned expert on this topic, it would be you, just because you've done this so many times and successfully, and run a multi-million-dollar organization with your multiple martial arts schools. So if we're to just start from the beginning, if I'm a martial arts school owner and I'm looking to open up my next location, I want to grow my growth, where do you start?
A lot of trials and tribulations to get to where we are now, but I certainly feel confident we've got it pretty accurate. Certainly over the last number of locations we've opened, been very successful as we followed the blueprint from day one. Probably the most important thing is once you establish your why you want to do it and what you want to achieve, is to find the geographical area you want to be in. And one of the key things is, if you're going to own both the locations, you need to be able to manage those. So anything more than an hour's drive away becomes a little bit untenable. But if you're, 30 to 45 minutes away, it's an ideal location. That's the first thing. So you just basically look at the map, and if you're in a city, do you how many suburbs away do you want to be? How busy it is to travel there? If you're in a rural environment, what's the next largest town or city, and how long is it going to take to get there? And you need to account that in, because that's one of the key things. If you are running both locations, you certainly need to have that measured from the start. Probably the next thing is once you decide where you'd like to go, is to physically go there yourself and just have a look around, get a feel for the place, just see what happens. And there's a lot of subheadings under that of what we do, but primarily is just see. I know it sounds a bit, of a sort of fly by your seat of your pants way of, setting up a business, but get a vibe. It really is, get that vibe for that area. And you can get that over a couple of days visits, just by interacting with the community, having a look around, and obviously doing your research.
Perfect. So I want to talk a bit more about visiting for the vibe and so forth, but let's take just one step back. Before you even visited the town, what are you looking for? If you draw up a map and you're looking, all right, well, I'm here and I'm looking at a radius of about 30 minutes to an hour from where I'm at for my next location. What are the things that you're looking for, and what type of research are you doing to determine where you're going to set up?
So once I've gone to the place and had a look physically, just to sort of satisfy myself, that's an area. So these two things correlate together, and that is, then I go on and I look on the Bureau of Statistics. I look for the population in the area. I look for the median income. I look for activities. Is it a sporting town or is it a retiree town? Is it a low socio-economic area, or is it a wealth area? Generally, somewhere in between those two is an ideal area. Young families. You can plonk yourself in the very wealthy area, but people, haven't got any time, and then you put yourself in an area where there's a lot of folk that just haven't got the resources to, participate. So you got to weigh all those things up so you can do your research. Local government area websites have a lot of information. So we systematically go through and tick off, look at the Bureau of Statistics, your local government area websites, and you just see, even news articles. I've done research on news articles as well, just to see what sort of people are in that area and if they would fit into your martial arts school community.
And what about sport activities and things like that? Is there anything you look at? Are you concerned about competition or anything like that?
Look, I think if you go to an area where there's a lot of sporting activity, we've had a lot more success where there was area where there wasn't. So, do they have a soccer competition, a touch football competition, basketball, hockey? How many teams they got? And that's easy. You just look up the local associations. For example, hockey association for field hockey, football, all sorts of things, swimming, whatever, sporting, and I even look historically at the sporting pages for that area, to see the prowess of the athletes that come out of there. Because if they're a sporty town, it's, you do run into the thing, we can only train in the summer because winter and vice versa. But once you get people involved, they'll work it out, and you'll have them there training all year round. So, you want to look at that. But if it's an area where, as I said, you may have a lot of retirees or people, there's not much action happening, you may have a level of success. But I just found that, really looking into the area you're going to makes a big difference.
Fantastic. If we had to look at population density and how big a community is there a set number that you think of, what sort of a minimum, especially if you're looking at like a rural town that's close by, that there's just not enough people in the vicinity to make it work?
I look at percentages. So if you can get 1% of the population to participate, 15,000 is a good benchmark. So if you've got 15,000 people who are within 30 minutes of where you're going to set up your new martial arts school, generally you'll get 150 people there as a rule. Obviously, this varies from location to location, but that's been the formula I've used probably for 30 years, especially we have a lot of rural locations. Some initially were just community services into small areas, but, as we went along and become more proficient at what we did, we identified around that 15,000. So although we do have some schools where there's a very small population and 5,000 or 6,000, they have over 100 members. So, wow. It really depends on the community. So that's everything dovetails together. It's really important to make sure it all marries together when you're doing your research. And you need to be honest in your assessment, because sometimes you get a little bit, look at things through rose-coloured glasses. So it's really important to make sure you're honest with your analysis.
So let's say you visit a town and you like the vibe and it feels good. Has there ever been a moment where emotions clouded the actual logic business brain and maybe the decision making didn't go in the right way?
When I wore a younger man's clothes, yes, because I thought everyone should do martial arts, and I couldn't understand why everywhere in the whole world wasn't doing martial arts. But the reality come along pretty quickly, and so you can make a clouded judgment. But with my overall approach now, if you follow the analysis and you follow the steps, you'll get past that emotive feel. For example, we looked at a number of locations adjacent, other towns near where I live at the present time, and one up north was closer to the one south. But once we went there and did our due diligence, we found that the one up north just wasn't going to support a full-time centre, and be great for a little community martial arts in a hall type place. They'd be fantastic for that. And there's some great martial arts schools there, and they don't ever have any great numbers because it's just not that environment.
And can you recall what the distinct trigger that made you feel that that's just, what is it about the town that you felt, or the research that told you that it's just not going to work there?
Well, initially the vibe just wasn't there, and there was just the atmosphere. Then when I did my research, sporting groups and socioeconomic and that, it started to really throw up a lot of red flags. And I just thought, before I proceed any further with this, I'm not going to make a quick decision. So I sort of left it for a few weeks and come back and went over the material, and I chose the other location, which was a great success. So I guess, the vibe's not a thing, but it just comes with experience. But having the opportunity to look at statistics, income, age, population, demographics, obviously then what's happening in that town. Was it a highway town, or was it bypassed? Like there's lots of little things that added up, and it just didn't add up right, and I made the right decision.
I just want to go back on the distance, because we spoke about within a half an hour's drive, and I think anybody that's in a city might think, whoa, nobody's going to drive 30 minutes to get to martial arts in a city environment, right? But your experience in a rural town is very different, right?
In some of our rural locations, we have people drive 100 kilometres or 60 mile, as we know it, each way to class twice a week,
Wow.
without fail, and have done that religiously year in and year out. So in the city, I find that if you're more than, say, people about 25 to 30 minutes, that's a maximum they'll travel, but generally it's 15 to 20 minutes, but you still don't want to be plonked on top of, in an area that's you're not happy with. You need to have a good area. So you still need to do the same due diligence. We have locations in major capital cities as well, so we understand how that works. So there's sort of like, you just need to make sure what, public transport, is that available. One of our locations in Sydney is the train station straight across the road from where they've got the dojo, which is the martial arts school, and it's a great little location. So it's not a full-time one, it's a community hall, but he's got such a great relationship there. He can set up, he has a set-up team. They set up each night. He has 150-odd members, and he's just killing it. It's just great. It's just really good. Great location.
Fantastic. So let's talk about that with location, right? So you've done your research, your decision-making process have evolved, and you're confident that, all right, I found the place, I found the town or the suburb where I'm going to set up my location. Now you start looking for an actual venue, an actual facility where you can set up. What are the elements that you go through to assess where a good location is or not?
It really comes down to a lot of things, but the major thing I found is accessibility. As I said, in that Sydney location, we had a choice of a better venue, but it was buried. It was so far away from public transport, whereas this one, it's just people just step off the train and walk across the road. So it's probably not the best venue, but it's been the greatest venue. So you need to look at, if people have to come off a main thoroughfare and turn more than 3 times, they usually just don't bother with it. And what I mean by that is if I'm going on a main thoroughfare through a city or a regional area and you just turn left, right, left, there it is. It's been a little formula I've used. And as people know, everyone here that's been involved in setting up a martial arts school, you can spend a lot more on advertising if you've got a place that's pretty much not known about. So sometimes I see the rent as an investment in my marketing, and I balance that. So if you've got a big signage, it's easy accessible, and it's in an area that may have other activities similar to yours, like a gym, massage therapist, an indoor centre of some activity where people come. It really is a factor in making a decision. You don't really want to be next to a trucking company on one side, a diesel mechanic on the other, or a noisy sort of industrial area, because it just might be cheaper, but you'll be punished in the long run because people just don't want to bring their kids there. So it really comes down to thinking like a parent bringing a child, or a person who's finished their day at the office, or even a tradesperson. They just want to come somewhere. It's nice, it's clean, it's easy to get to, good parking, well lit, and lighting's a key thing, especially at night time. I've visited other martial arts schools, and you needed a torch to get in through the car park. It's just little things like that makes a massive difference.
So, Kevin, I find it interesting that you mentioned that you favor accessibility to the actual venue itself. Now, once you've found this venue, how do you then, do you do random visits at random time of the day, or how do you just further assess if this is, before you sign on the dotted line?
Yeah, I think that's really important for people setting up a new location, is to actually go there during the key times. You'll have a timetable. So at this point, I would have a ghost timetable as written up roughly what days and nights we'd run classes based on our other locations and what works already. And then I go to the area and sort of drive around and just see, because if there's always going to be schools nearby or businesses closing or whatever. And you just need to get a feel as a parent, dropping your child off, getting there after work, how hard is it to get there? Some locations are gridlocked at 3:30 p.m, so you might have to review your timetable. Nighttime is always important for safety of your students as they come and go, and the parents. Parking accessibility, walking distance from public transport. Is it a safe walk? You just want to think about all those things. And whilst you may not be able to tick every single box of that list of things I've mentioned, if you can get close, it'll work much better for you.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of the foundational stuff, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I do want to cover something, and this is a question that always comes up a lot, different business structures and how you go about it. Now, you mentioned that you select a location that's within the 30 to 60-minute range, but obviously the goal is for you to open the location and not completely run it forever. So you want to have somebody else in charge. Now, I know you've got a few business structures, 3 that you potentially work with, but if you don't mind sharing, just like, what is your favorite business structure for your next location, 2 and up, and why you prefer that?
With my experiences, I've tried many different formulas. I find under license seems to work the best for me. And that means we have someone who has grown within your organisation, and then they can branch out and open the next location. Now, that person would be obviously one of your instructor team, or ready to become part of your instructor team, and have the financial backing to put themselves into the position. And that sometimes we do work out a financial arrangement of like helping set up as part of the license agreement. They're primarily under license, so it gives the person autonomy. It gives them their own identity, still under your umbrella and in structure, which enables them to be very, very successful because all the hard work's already done.
All right, Kevin, we've got lots more to talk about, and I'll lead into that. But if you don't mind sharing, we got together a couple of months ago, and I started asking questions just about your process. And you spoke at one of our events prior for our partners group, the Partners Intensive. So we decided to get you back on. Depending when you're listening to this, we either have the full program released or you're still in time for the event. But we decided to get together, and my job was to extract all your knowledge and help put it together. And we've come up with the whole format, the whole blueprint, the next profitable location blueprint. And do you mind just sharing a little bit why the program and who will benefit most from that?
Over the years, by default, I started public speaking at seminars and events. Been privileged to do it pretty much all over the world, and met a lot of fantastic people along the way. And every time, people would ask me, how do you do this? How do you do that? And I sort of give them a rough idea. And after our discussion, I thought, well, it'd be remiss of me not to package it up so other people have the opportunity to, get their next location up and profitable and running successfully without having to go through all the pitfalls. And my ideas aren't grandiose or, unrealistic. They're all measurable and they're all obtainable. So, I think it's a great opportunity for people to plug in and, have a listen. And we've been very successful, and I wish nothing but success for everybody else in the industry.
I have to add, that is a really modest way of putting it. From the perspective of helping Kevin, putting all this together and breaking down the modules from how to fit out all the facilities, how to maximize your space, the organic marketing approach you take, which I have to say next level, before, and this is coming from a marketing guy, this is just setting up the right foundations to get your school growing and thriving way before you take on any paid type marketing campaigns. Yes. So the approach is just, I have to commend you. It's really phenomenal.
Well, thank you, George. And I truly hope, people do take the opportunity, because they will benefit. It's, we called it Next Profitable Location Blueprint, because it's about your next location. We want it to be profitable, and the blueprint is your map. It's clearly, and we've done all the heavy lifting, and if you follow the steps, I've had nothing but success so far. And you've got 40 years of mistakes condensed and cleaned and polished and out the other side already. So, well, thank you very much.
Perfect. And we'll leave all the details where you can access either the event if you're in time or the actual recorded program. It'll be on martialartsmedia.com/129. The number's 129. Kevin, thanks so much for sharing so generously, and we'll speak again.
Thank you very much, George. Looking forward to it.